Okay, so Kamala, here's a legit line of attack that Trump could have invoked because this story had already broken by the time he did that interview. There have been stories for years about her staff turnover. Some former staff members have come out openly to talk about how absolutely horrible she is to work for. When she was campaigning in 2020, I think it was the Washington Post did a whole write up on how pretty much her entire staff quit altogether. Um, so now this organization that kind of digs into records to find what's going on in Washington, opened the books, did some research, and found that Kamala Harris had an almost 92% staff turnover in her time as VP. Under Kamala Harris, the office of the vice president has been called a revolving door, a staff exodus of key aides heading for the exits. That's not hyperbole from the national media. Our auditors at Open the Books quantified an extraordinarily high 91.5% staff turnover rate. Elected in Elected in November 2020, Harris took the oath of office in January 2021. As of March 31st, 2024, only 4 of the initial 47 staffers from the first year are still employed consistently and without interruption by the vice president. Furthermore, the turnover chaos isn't getting better. In the trailing 12-month period, 24 staffers left. That's almost half the employees. The top to bottom dysfunction that The Atlantic referenced in October 2023 is shown in the reported payrolls that we captured. Quote, in her first year and a half as vice president, Harris saw the departure of her chief of staff, communications director, domestic policy advisor, national security advisor, and other aides. The semi-annual report of the Secretary of the Senate, among other things, lists the names, titles, and salaries of staff in the Office of the Vice President, OVP. In the most recent publishing through March 31st, only 4 staff from the original 47 listed in the 2021 report remained consistently employed and are among the office's 50 current staff members. In the last year alone, 24 people left their jobs. In our 2021 reporting at Forbes, VP Kamala Harris is the least transparent elected official in the nation. We outlined the OVP's refusal to provide any information to the public and taxpayers. Her office denied our FOIA request and claimed that they were immune. Therefore, we had to rely on the U.S. Senate's semi-annual report for October 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021, which gives a list of the 28 staff members who had been hired by the new administration between January 20th and March 31st, 2021. Over the next few months, the OVP added another approximately 20 staff members. We calculated that for VP Harris's 28 staff listed in the Senate report, salaries added up to $2,334,223. But President Joseph Biden's congressional budget submission shows the OVP got $5 million for 23 full-time staff in 2021 and requested over $6 million for 27 in 2022. The OVP wouldn't answer for the discrepancy in budget and staffing, citing the earlier provision that states only federal agencies are subject to FOIA, and the OVP, it argues, isn't a federal agency. Vice President Harris, the second in command and possible next president of the United States, is the only elected official in the country not required to share her office's spending with the public. I never knew that about the vice president's office, that they're not subject to FOIA.
Yeah.
Since 2021, most transparent administration in history, folks. Since 2021, only 127 of Biden's initial 560 White House employees remain, a 77% turnover rate that would be considered high if not for Harris's 92% rate. He has the largest White House headcount since the Richard Nixon administration, who was the first president to exceed 500 staffers. Now Biden employs 565 staffers, 27 of whom are responsible for diapering and wiping his mouth. That's not in there. Costing taxpayers $61 million in salaries. That's up from the 524 staffers in 2023, costing $52 million. Biden has 152 more employees than Trump and 97 more than Obama when each were in the fourth year of their first terms. Simone Sanders, Harris's chief spokesperson and senior advisor in early December 2021, was quoted in the Washington Post responding to critics of the staff departures saying, quote, "We are not making rainbows and bunnies all day. What I hear is that people have hard jobs, and I'm like, welcome to the club." Ugh. She left the OVP later that year. Quote, "Working for Harris is a nightmare, not just because she rides her staff hard, but also because she does so without the competence, decisiveness, and effectiveness that inspires people in politics to suffer under demanding bosses," Dan McLaughlin wrote in a January 2022 National Review article titled, "People Really, Really Do Not Want to Work for Kamala Harris." Okay, so speaking of Simone Sanders, it's always funny when these propagandists accidentally tell the truth every now and then. You know, every once in a while they forget themselves. So she dropped a little accidental truth bomb on MSNBC.
Experience had been, you know, it was new for me when I worked for her because I had never worked for a high profile woman before. I had only ever worked for men. And there was one day at work where I was like, "Ma'am, you might be the last woman I work for, because this is a
there's a story there.
It's a lot. This a lot that we got to deal with over in here."
She forgot not to tell the truth.
Okay, but I have a question, because Jimmy did a segment on this and I just watched that, and Malcolm in the middle of it said that he did a little bit of like looking into that, the whole segment there, and he said that it seemed as if she was talking about that she was getting attacked, racist and sexist attack, because she works for a woman, that it wasn't because of Kamala Harris, that it was because in working for a woman, she was getting more attacks than she did when she was working for a man. Now, that doesn't make a whole tremendous amount of sense to me. I don't know. I haven't seen the entire segment yet, but regardless, it is undeniable at this point that her turnover is incredibly high, that the rumor mill has been spreading for a very long time that she is horrible to work for. I don't know. And Simone Sanders is awful anyways, so if she can't hang,
I don't know, man. If you look at the words around it, she may very well have been saying that. I mean, it would be very on brand for her to be talking about how terrible the attacks against Kamala Harris are. And then in the middle of that, dropped a truth bomb, because if you look at the sentence structure, if you look at that paragraph, she's talking about what it's like to work in that office. So now she might have gone ahead and spun it, realized, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. No, what I was really talking about, but I don't know, man. It seems pretty clear to me she told the truth by accident on the air, based on, because it's not like
regardless of what she said, it's clear that this is an ongoing issue. I mean, you don't have a 92% turnover rate unless you're awful to work for, especially in a position like that. To be able to work for the president or the vice president's office, I mean, that's a pretty good gig. And to leave that position, there's got to be some pretty good reason for that. And 92% turnover, that's insane.
92%. And you have this long history. It was the same thing on her campaign. She couldn't keep staff. And one of the staff members, when the campaign imploded, before she got chosen for vice president, wrote an open letter talking about how horrible it was, the way people were treated, and that hopefully the end of this campaign will give her some time for reflection. There was a father of an intern who wrote an op-ed talking about how his son, when he interned for her, never met her. The interns were not allowed to look her in the eye or address her. Only senior staff were. And everyone had to stand up and say, "Good morning, General," when she entered the office. Now, this is all in keeping of how I have long read her as a psychopath. I think the reason she laughs at weird, inappropriate moments is because she's a psychopath. She doesn't understand.
Duping delight. That's called duping delight. When psychopaths laugh at inappropriate moments, it's because they know that they're lying to you and they think it's funny and they can't like contain that. And so that's a real thing. It's called duping delight.
Right. Right. I believe that this is why she has such weird, off-putting behavior. Because I think she's a psychopath. And when you hear these and not being able to retain people, that's in keeping with a psychopath. They're not able to maintain long-term relationships with people because they can't help but to behave like what they are, psychopaths.
Yeah. And Simone Sanders also did another, I don't know if it was the same interview or a different interview, but she said something else where she was talking about how difficult it is to work for Kamala Harris. And she said that around the office, they called her the interrogator. Because that's how she conducts herself like a cop or a district attorney would and interrogates people. So this is not a one-off. This is not the first time that Simone Sanders has ever said anything, but when Jimmy was talking about it, apparently Malcolm was looking into it but that didn't make a tremendous amount of sense to me.
I mean,
so I don't
honestly, my take, I mean, I haven't seen that whole thing. My take is Malcolm is wrong.
Yeah,
I
tend to agree.
My take is he heard some spin
I love Malcolm.
trying to do. Yeah, but I think he's probably wrong. He probably heard some spin and looked at it, and I'm sure she did say it's tough. I'm sure this conversation was taking place in that context, and then she dropped a truth bomb in the middle by accident, and then got back on message. But if you look at that segment, no, come on, man. That sounds like the way they would have spun it once the clip went viral. No, she was talking about that, which I'm sure she was overall, but not at that moment. Not at that moment. She let a little truth slipped out.
Please clap.